Wake Island, Caspian Border, Operation Metro, Operation Locker, Damavand Peak, Zeba Tower, Zavad, Propaganda, Alteri Range, Dawnbreaker, Dragon Pass, Siege of Shanghai, Paracel Storm. Some of the best, if not the best maps Battlefield has ever given to us. There's more, sure, but these are always at the top of lists I see when I peruse the interwebs. And for good reason. These maps are bigger than what we have so far in Battlefield 6 and some of the best fun times we've had so far in the entire franchise. So much so that I've seen so many people request these maps and others be added to the remastered list and added to every title since their initial release. So why haven't they? Let's see what's what then, shall we? Now, before we hit the drop zone, BF Comms dropped this yesterday. Hotfix Update 1.2.2.2. Deployed to resolve EULA screen. The team has identified the cause of the EULA screen, which is the user agreement, appearing more frequently than expected on consoles. Today we've deployed a client hotfix to resolve the issue. Thank you for your patience while we work through this. Okay. So it seems this should be resolved now, but I would like to hear from someone, or anyone for that matter, still getting the EULA. I know it popped up on a couple PC players, but I believe this was predominantly over console. Okay. I find this topic I'm going to cover today a bit on the amusing side. When Battlefield 6 first launched, there was a lot of anti-nostalgia attitude from a lot of players. I mostly chalked it up to the Call of Duty tourists who never really played Battlefield before or barely touched it at all. This was when I first started hearing the term Battlefield dads with a not so nice tone to it, like it was almost a slur. Socials had so many comments about wanting to see so many legacy maps added to Battlefield 6 that the kids were like, "Isn't it time for bed yet, old man?" I mean, I too had a wish list of legacy maps I have been hoping to see for a very long time. Paracel Storm was there. Gulf of Oman, Karg Island, my two favorite maps. Gulman Railway, Flood Zone was always a fun time. Hangar 21 never got old. Dawnbreaker is there somewhere. Giants of Karelia and Hainan Resort were all some of my favorite maps to play. Some of it was for nostalgia, sure, I won't deny that. But some of it was just due to the layout and the design, too. We weren't asking for the past because we were stuck in it. We were asking for it because the design worked. These maps were just great to play on and scrub around in with tomfoolery. A lot of these maps are big open sandboxes that allow for all sorts of destruction. Our favorite thing, the Levolution. Every weapon, vehicle, and gadget you could shake a stick at. These maps brought us the Battlefield moments. Viral clips that led to future trophies, rewards, and accomplishments. These maps brought us funny moments and resulted in now long fan-favorite YouTube channels. But this also led to the, why can't we have them ported into new releases? Well, that's not an easy question to answer. There's a lot involved. But Hannibal, it's really easy. They already have the content. Just drop it in and we'll be satiated for the time being. Well, my little weirdos, for starters, EA and Battlefield Studios are hesitant to do this for you for a pretty simple reason. It's a bad trade for a live service game. Okay, thanks for watching. Tune in next time for... Oh, that's not good enough for you? I figured as much. Okay, here we go. You must take in consideration the cost versus the return, kiddos. Remastering a map is not a copy-paste job, no matter what you think. Old maps must be rebuilt for new engine features such as lighting, destruction, physics, movement, fucking netcode, larger player counts, different pacing, updated assets, and performance standards. Yes, the map itself is a pretty easy thing to port over, but getting that map up to snuff is something entirely different. And that's just for starters. Then we need full QA, balance passes, and live support. That's essentially new map workload without new map marketing value. And the result? One remastered map can cost nearly as much as a new one, but doesn't sell the game the same way. Time, kids, is money. Resources is money. Personnel is money. That cost adds up. Then you have to take into account the live service content strategy. Modern Battlefield runs on a content drip model, not a content dump. Now, this is where you'd be slightly justified in your complaints, at least in spirit anyway. Holding maps back allows seasonal drops, a come back and play tactic, marketing cycles. If EA and Battlefield Studios dropped all fan-favorite maps at once, you get a short-term spike, then a long-term drought. And just about every gaming studio out in the world optimizes for retention over their short-term spikes. But Hannibal, we're just asking for at least 2 maps and 1 remastered map. Okay, so 1 remastered per season sounds like light work, right? Well, it isn't. A seasonal cadence is usually tight, between 8 to 12 weeks. Within that window, teams are already handling new map or major content drop, weapons, systems, bug fixes, your fucking netcode balance and stability, live ops support, shit like that. Now add a remastered every season. It competes directly for the same environment, art, design resources. It still requires full lighting rebuilds, destruction passes, balance tuning for current sandbox, spawn flow redesign. That's not a bonus, weirdos. That's another major deliverable every cycle. You think you're asking for something simple. In reality, you aren't. You're asking for more than what a current amount of resources can provide during a seasonal model. Let's not forget the design mismatch, the old maps versus the new system. Fan-favorite maps were built for different games, guys. Sure, they can add a remaster. They did it with Operation Firestorm at launch, during the 4-ish years of development of Battlefield 6. They didn't have the pressure. They didn't have a time crunch. Now, I'm not saying they can't do this. I'm saying they can't at the pace you demand. Here's a prime example of mismatches. Movement systems, Battlefield 3 versus Battlefield 6 pacing. Guys, the way we moved in Battlefield 3 is slow and clunky compared to Battlefield 6. And no, I'm not talking about the fucking bunny hop bullshit. I'm just talking about walking, sprinting, ADS. Slow, clunky. In order for the devs to remaster, say, Karg Island, they have to do some serious tweaking to the overall movement to make it match the current game. Then there's player counts, whether it's 32, 64, or 128. Vehicle balance changes, destruction tech differences. Some of these maps, these legacy maps, would break the current flow. Oh look, some of the old spawn locations became hardcore spawn traps, or play completely differently, possibly worse than it did back then. So EA and Battlefield Studios either heavily redesign them, which angers our purists, or they don't ship them. Then there's you extra weirdos to take into consideration when players say, "Give us the classics." What often happens is they play them for nostalgia, and nostalgia alone. And then all of a sudden, they complain the maps are outdated, unbalanced, not like they remember. And EA and Battlefield Studios and all the other gaming studios know this loop. So they ration nostalgia instead of flooding it. But we also have creative and brand pressure problems. If Battlefield becomes just a greatest hits playlist, it signals a lack of innovation, no new identity. And a lot of you motherfuckers are already saying that shit now. And because EA is a company, they still need to justify a new title, a new direction, a reason a game exists. Studios look at session length, return rate after a week and then again after a month, mode and map population distribution. There's a ton of metrics they look at to justify. They rarely ever look at the comment sections on X, especially if you're a content creator or what have you. Oh, and let's not forget the licensing asset and technical debt I've gone over before. Some of the older content uses assets or tech pipelines that don't port nice and clean into the new systems. They often require re-recording audio, redoing textures, etc. Then you have third-party assets used in the older maps that EA doesn't outright own. Bad Company, Battlefield 3, Bad Company 2, they used third-party assets to finish off some of the finer details of that content. This was a common practice during the premium era. It's probably a big reason why you don't see a remastered version of Gulf of Oman, Operation Metro, or Operation Locker in Battlefield 6. EA doesn't want to fork out annual licensing fees, as they would be legally obligated to do. Besides, EA has already tried the all-in nostalgia approach. You fucks just weren't listening. Modes like Portal showed something important. Players say they want classic content, but engagement often shifts back to core progression, current systems, new unlocks. Besides, you don't get Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4 maps. You get altered versions. Did you guys not pay attention to Operation Firestorm and the changes they made to it? This is where a lot of expectations would break, guys. Players are thinking, just give me Siege of Shanghai, Metro, or Locker exactly how I remember it. In reality, different movement speed, different TTK. You know, our favorite content creators is still bitching about TTK in Battlefield 6. Different player count, different vehicle balances. So the map has to be scaled, reworked, and rebalanced. And then you get, this doesn't play like Battlefield 4. That backlash is predictable, and studios try to avoid stacking that every season. So dumping the classics into the game doesn't guarantee long-term engagement. You think it does, but it doesn't. Bottom line, releasing every fan-favorite map into Battlefield 6 nearly as much as new content shortens the game's lifecycle and creates design and expectation problems that hurt the retention. You guys are already complaining that retention is bad now, just by looking at Steam charts. So instead, they drip-feed the nostalgia. Mix it with the new content when the remasters are done cooking in the oven. And it controls the pacing across the seasons. But Hannibal, all they have to do is give us a remaster every season. What's so hard about that? Man, EA can't always sustain that without sacrificing new content, stability, or pacing. And honestly, the payoff you think is there, it ain't as strong as you think it is. So what looks like an obvious win from the outside, internally, a resource and lifecycle problem, not a creative one. Let's try this approach. The Frostbite Engine was developed by EA Digital Illusions and has been the flagship engine used throughout the Battlefield series since Battlefield Bad Company back in 2008. With me so far? Prior to Frostbite, EA was using the Refractor 2 engine, which was designed in 2002. So from Battlefield 1942 until Battlefield's 2142's Northern Strike, which was around 2007, EA used Refractor 2. Side note, Battlefield 2 Modern Combat was the only game at that time frame that used a different engine. That engine was renderware, but that title was console only. Anyway, Frostbite's main features included destructible environments, real-time lighting, selective sound prioritization, long-distance viewing, and high graphical standards and resolution. Now, as of 2022, 4 versions of the Frostbite engine have been deployed. Frostbite 1, 1.5, 2, and 3.
Thank you.
Frostbite introduced and primarily focused on the high amount of destructibility, allowing for almost every environmental piece to be destroyed, from walls to the ground itself. It allowed for real-time lighting, allowing the lighting angles and effects to change dynamically without any modifications needed to be made to the environment. It also allowed selective sound prioritizing. They called it HDR, High Dynamic Range. Basically, it means that it will select to emit more important and louder sounds rather than every sound at once. Basically, if a player is playing a radio and a tank shell explodes beside them, the game will drown out the radio due to the much louder explosion. So sounds of certain elements within the game would and could change at different distances, different angles, and in open or closed environments. Okay? Frostbite 1.0's focus was enhancing the destruction in later games. It allowed for large structures to be collapsed and crush everything within it. It also came with the ability to chip away at lighter pieces of environments instead of them being destroyed as a single entity. And that leads us to Frostbite 2. This was introduced in Battlefield 3. 2 took full advantage of the DirectX 11 API and 64-bit processors with no support for DirectX 9. So no, you couldn't play this game on Windows XP. Its focus featured enhanced in-game destruction, creating more refined physics than 1.0. It hard focused on things like tile-based deferred shading acceleration, MLAA for bandwidth conservation, quasi-real-time radiosity, improved environmental destruction, real-time approximated subsurface scattering. Bunch of nerd shit. See, kiddos, at the time Battlefield 3 released, your hardware would have been archaic by today's standards, and software advanced faster than the hardware, especially in gaming. So you had a simplified level of hardware, again, by today's standards, and a futuristic type of software that made the games look utterly badass. This is a huge reason why Battlefield 3 is considered peak first before Battlefield 4. Then, take into consideration that there weren't as many players around then as there are now, and that there weren't as many shooter games around back then as there are now. And speaking of Battlefield 4, the Frostbite 3 engine debuted with this game. Frostbite 3 received several upgrades, including improved tessellation technology. This little engine that featured enhanced in-game destruction, allowed for more destructible environments, enhanced micro-destruction and larger-scale destruction, and a new feature, our ever-beloved Levolution. As most of us cool kids know, Levolution allowed players to destroy shit like skyscrapers, dams, and shit that would impact the game. Some of these impacts would immediately fuck up one section of the map, like Siege of Shanghai, or Hainan Resort, to ruining a team's day by fucking up an entire map like Lancheng Dam. These impacts changed the gameplay and the flow after the destruction was triggered. The upgrade to the Frostbite engine also brought in some subtle enhancements like dynamic water behavior. This made water act more aggressively, such as waves being implemented during weather changes like in Paracel Storm, and players then had to face a water surface that would react to all the things, such as players and vehicles. Frostbite 3 allowed for additional elements in later titles such as Battlefield 1 and 5. It leveled up dynamic weather, which was considered a type of Levolution. And ray tracing through NVIDIA RTX and NVIDIA DLSS on PC was introduced to Battlefield 5. Now, Battlefield 6. EA pretty much dealt away with boxed versions of Frostbite, guys, so technically we're not on a Frostbite 4.0. It's an Evergreen version, meaning it could be developed onto and added on to instead of releasing it as a 4.0 or a 5.0, whatever. The reason we didn't get Levolution in Battlefield 6 is simply because DICE officially replaced it with a philosophy of tactical destruction. I mean, you can't just move a Battlefield 3 building into Battlefield 6 because that Battlefield 3 building is an empty shell. The Battlefield 6 engine expects that building to have layers, rebar, concrete, interior drywall. All that reacts to physics. To port it, they basically have to build the model twice. According to lead producers and technical directors in recent interviews, they stated Levolution in Battlefield 4 was essentially a high-budget magic trick. Something scripted. The skyscraper on Shanghai fell the exact same way every single time, and DICE felt this was a one-trick gameplay. So they've decided to lean into what they call apple coring, basically dynamic. You can dismantle buildings piece by piece with tanks and explosives, but the load-bearing parts are designed to stay up longer so the map doesn't just turn into a flat, boring desert of rubble halfway through the match. Other developers stated that all-out annihilation wouldn't be fun. Not sure I agree with that, but okay. They reasoned that when everything is 100% destructible or a massive event levels the map, it removes all cover. I mean, they're not technically wrong. They stated they wanted to ensure that gameplay spaces stay interesting for the full 30-minute round. Instead of one giant tower falling, you get hundreds of smaller, unscripted moments, like a tank crashing through a wall to create a new flank that wasn't there a minute ago. Another reason why they changed the presentation in the engine was simply hitting a next-gen floor. Christian Bull, the technical director for Battlefield 6, advised that the biggest trick for the new Frostbite engine wasn't a specific version number, but the fact that they dropped support for PS4 and Xbox One. So by raising the floor, so to speak, to only target modern consoles and PC, they could prioritize physics-based destruction over scripted events, function over spectacle. There's some Levolution in Battlefield 6. It's not entirely gone. You could still topple a massive crane in Myrick Valley. You could still knock out walls for some tunnel traversals in Hagental Base. You could still destroy some of the little buildings in various maps. Most of the new engine's power is being used to handle the math for 64-player destruction syncing without the lag or rubber banding that plagued earlier titles, like Battlefield 4. There was always some hardcore jittering, rubber banding, and other audio and visual glitches every time the hotel collapsed, every time Siege of Shanghai and Charlie Point broke down. Every single time. So basically, DICE decided to trade the big cinematic movie for a granular sandbox where you decide what gets destroyed and how. But with limits. But Hannibal, all they gotta do is copy and paste the map in the Battlefield 6 and it should be easy! Jesus Christ. I cannot tell you how many times I've had this argument. Guys, even if you copy-paste the geometry, you aren't just moving an object, you're moving it into a completely different physics and lighting environment. The new Evergreen Frostbite Engine. The geometry data, that 3D shape of the map, is indeed easy to port. The functionality to make it break, light up, and play right with the modern engine is almost nearly impossible. In Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, destruction was often a binary state. A wall was either there or gone. The new engine uses volumetric destruction. A legacy asset won't have the internal bones or physics properties to crumble dynamically. To make it up to snuff, developers essentially have to rebuild the asset from the ground up with modern damage models. Then there's the lighting gap. Old maps are built for static or limited dynamic lighting. The new engine uses sophisticated global illumination and ray tracing ready shaders. You see this every time you do a graphics card update. It's literally telling you it's adjusting to the new shaders. Slapping an old texture into the new engine looks like a mobile game asset. It glows incorrectly or has no depth, requiring a full art pass. And you fuckers would bitch about that shit too. Map's bad because you can't see shit. Why does this look like a 90s television episode? And then there's scale and traversal, guys. This is the big one to consider. Soldier movement, sprinting, speeding, sliding, and all that other shit is faster now than it was in Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4. A map like Wake Island or Strike at Carkland actually feels smaller in a modern engine because players cover ground faster. Scaling the map to maintain the original feel requires remeasuring every objective and sightline. Remember when I talked about cost? If a dev spends, let's say, 500 hours remaking a 2011 era apartment building to work with 2026 destruction, those are 500 hours not spent making a brand new, never before seen asset. Or should we mention the nostalgia tax at all? When DICE remakes a map, they have to deal with the memory perfection. If they change one alleyway in Grand Bazaar or balance it for the new engine, the hardcore fans tend to riot. If they make a new map, they have total creative freedom to fix balance issues on the fly. Remember, kiddos, like it or not, EA is obsessed with the live service model. They've learned that legacy maps equals shorter spikes. People log in for a weekend to see the old map, play 2 rounds, and say, that was cool, and log off. And new content equals retention. New maps, weapons, and seasonal themes force players to learn a new meta, which keeps them engaged longer. EA wants Battlefield to be a forever game, guys, like Apex Legends or Fortnite. So relying on the past makes the franchise look like it's in a maintenance mode rather than an innovation mode. You hear Call of Duty players bitch about this very thing all the fucking time. How many videos out there are screaming for Nuketown to not get another remake? That map has been in 8 Call of Duty main titles and a total of 15 times if you count the variants. This is why I point to Portal so much, guys. The point about Portal and the Godot-based editor is the ultimate middle ground here, kiddos. But EA won't release the SDK files for us to port them into Portal. Okay. That's a fair pushback. I will give you that. And honestly, it's likely a proprietary tech issue. Frostbite contains middleware and code that EA doesn't own or doesn't want competitors to see. We've touched upon this before. Back in the day, game companies often outsourced certain assets in their games, and those codes and such are not owned by EA. Some of those were SpeedTree, Havok physics, specialized shaders, shit like that. So EA has 3 choices here, really. Pay licensing fees, buy the third-party assets outright, or just let them be in the past. This is where innovation comes in for some of these hardcore coders. We've already had somebody try to do Operation Metro. It was not to scale, it was not 1-to-1, but you know what? It's the one we have right now. Again, I was happy to see it. Everybody else bitched about it. EA might own the name of these maps, guys, but they might not own the specific license for the sound engine or the environmental assets used back in 2008 or 2011. Renewing those for a free map drop is a localized financial nightmare for a suit at EA. Like it or not. Even if EA gave the community a light version of the map editor, the community would do the time-consuming work of remaking the legacy maps for free, which I've already seen people bitch about. Like Portal is something new, and we didn't do that shit already for 4 years in 2042. EA has concerns from a business point of view that if the community makes 50 perfect legacy maps, nobody will care about the upcoming seasonal maps. This would also devalue the Battle Pass. I mean, I'm okay in spirit with devaluing the Battle Pass, but that's just me. And a final thought here is the Operation Metro paradox. Metro is the most played map in franchise history, but it's also the map that breaks the sandbox the most. If they gave us a slew of legacy maps, drip-fed or all at once, the player base would most likely just stay on Metro Locker 24/7, effectively killing the rest of the new content the devs worked so hard on, even if it's good and improved content everyone likes, because that's exactly what happened with Battlefield 4. So the big question is, can Battlefield Studios bring into their content cadence a full remastered map when they drop content updates every season? Realistically, they could, given enough resources and given enough incentive to do so. Practically? Probably not. Remember, they announced Goldman Railway was coming for Season 2, and they split Season 2 into 3 phases. And we're already in Phase 2, and it's not dropped yet. I suspect Goldman was in the works before Battlefield 6's launch. Operation Firestorm was most likely an easy map to port over because it's become a baseline map for the jack-of-all-trades classes. It's basically a controlled group map with a familiar face, so it can be used by devs, players, and testers for all the vehicles, weapons, gadgets, etc. They didn't give us Firestorm because it's the best map ever. They gave it to us because if the new physics can handle these oil tanks exploding, the 12 vehicles crashing into the open desert without the server dying, then the engine is ready for the rest of the game. But there's a counter argument to this, and I don't necessarily disagree with. A lot of players that have been around a while suggest maps like Strike at Karkland or Sain Crossing would or could be better for gameplay testing flow. Firestorm has historically been criticized for being too open and a sniper's paradise. However, for a developer trying to prove that Battlefield is back to being a massive-scale sandbox, the sheer scale of the desert refinery usually wins out over the tight technicality of cramped locales. Now hang on, there's more. Some of you may have raised an eyebrow at that last part because Battlefield 6 launched with more CQB maps than what is typically acceptable Battlefield-sized maps. Battlefield has never really had much of a problem when it came to their smaller maps. Most of the complaints are in regards to design for simple infantry flow. How many lanes are there? How many funnels? Can we potentially avoid repeated choke points over and over again? I'm talking design here, not how we feel about them. Metro does have choke points, as does Locker, but the map is designed in a way that all the players clash in the middle at Charlie, and then it becomes a tug-of-war match on which team can either slip past the tidal waves of opposing teams meeting in the middle, or who can kill the other team faster and then push to the rest of the map for total control. Then it becomes a stand your ground sort of situation. So I don't count those maps like that. But to test the scale with all the toys, you want a tried and true map locale everyone knows. Everyone knowing it isn't the same thing as everyone liking it. I could argue that Card Island and Gulf of Oman, again, two of my favorite maps in the whole wide Battlefield world, would be better choices. Everyone has their opinion on that. I'm just saying I get why they launched the game with Firestorm. Goldman would be another good choice for size, and I believe we haven't seen it yet simply due to the quality we spoke on earlier. Guys, a lot of complaints since launch was about quality, the demand for it. DICE stated they wanted to focus on quality more than quantity. I, for one, would prefer that instead of doing a content dump. Right now, you have a slew of players pissed off at the so-called drip feed approach. I wouldn't have so much of an issue with that, but I know that these same mouth breathers would bitch about the content dump approach because they'd get the quantity and then turn around and bitch about the quality. There's zero pleasing these people. It's why I cannot take their complaints really seriously. It's why I poke fun at them all the time. So, they are making sure the design works. Things are tested to death and the new map launches without a hitch. Again, I'm sorry if that is unacceptable to some. But like I said before, if you don't like it, there are a plethora of other games you can play and bitch about. Is it fair to want both? Quantity and quality? Well, yes, it is fair, but it's oftentimes not realistic. I myself want both. I don't get where some of you weirdos think otherwise simply because I provide context to understand how the real world works in my holier-than-thou attitude and approach. Explaining how the backend works doesn't mean defending where the backend comes from. I'm simply trying my best here to provide a more constructive approach than game bad! Thanks for watching, folks. I very much appreciate the fact that you took time out of your Friday to hang with me for a little bit. I also want to thank those who recently purchased this nifty mug from the merch store to show off their inner hood rat while sipping their favorite tasty beverages. This extra support you guys provide me helps me keep going in this bizarre thunderscape we call YouTube. Which reminds me, guys, memberships, merch purposes, the Ko-Fi donations, the Cash App, these things don't go back into my pocket. Not like it may sound. These levels of support literally get cycled back into the things the channel would need to keep bringing you content. Software and application purposes or subscriptions to bring you better quality videos. Hardware updates because sweet baby Jesus, RAM is fucking expensive right now. Game purchases like the upcoming War Dogs game. The support you've shown allowed me to purchase Escape from Tarkov. It does not buy me skins or in-game coin or shit like that. I spend my personal money on that dumb stuff. So buying a t-shirt, a ball cap, or even a mug goes right back into the channel. Now, some of you may want to know why I haven't posted Tarkov stuff since the support helped me purchase the game. And that's a fair observation. It's a pretty simple answer. The ungodly YouTube algorithm. Now, this segues into my next plug point. The algorithm is based on channel identity, not specifically a category. Right now, we're just under 3K in subs. The current goal is to reach 3K before my 1-year anniversary of getting monetized, which is roughly in about 80 days, so sometime around June 13th. Once I get to 3K, I can start uploading other games into the channel without giving the algorithm a fucking stroke. And I've always wanted this channel to be about video games, not just a single game. I do love Battlefield 6, but it's not the only game I play, and I know it's not the only game you guys play. And a game like War Dogs has indeed piqued my interest, and I want to start covering it once it launches, and hopefully we can get to 3K before it arrives. So 3K is the current goal, folks. We're really close to one of the biggest hurdles to get past in YouTube. So, if you like the content, please subscribe. Share it with those you know that might be interested. We're working on a community here, my hood rats. We're looking to expand my new empire.
Your new empire?
Yeah.
Grab what you can.
I want to provide a bit of context as to why I find the extra support important. And why I do sincerely appreciate it when you guys do that extra mile with memberships, hype points, and store purchases. Not only do I genuinely appreciate it, I wanted to let you know where that support goes to. The new studio is coming along steadily. We're moving out of the shared space for a more cozy environment. This would allow me to continue making the videos you keep watching and to set up streaming again without the worry of high traffic in the house. The family is pretty active here, and sometimes they just come in while I'm working on the content. So all in all, things are looking good here. We garnered some new subs recently, some folks bought some mugs, and a bunch of you joined the Discord. Hells yeah. So if you want to be in on the shenanigans and hood rat shit, like, share, subscribe, and come to the Discord. I do update the Discord link every upload, but if it's not working for whatever ungodly reason, hell's bells, leave a comment, and I'll pull a fresh one for you, hot right out of the oven, and drop it into the reply. I do read all the comments, and I do my very best to reply to them. Even if you're just dropping a quick comment, I'll still do my best to reply back to let you know that I saw it, and we could go from there. You all have been awesome, bringing me excellent discussions all the time, so please keep that up. Okay, but the part I don't do very often because, hell's bells, I hate doing it. The rest of the plugs for supporting the channel are also in every video description. They are there because I believe all of you can read and don't like being pushed to buy shit. If you want to support, you do it. I'm not going to sit here and ask all the time. The videos are always made for free of charge. Your time is valuable, and I respect that you took time out of your day to hang with me. So this is a big reason I don't push the plugs, but just mentioning they exist and where to find them from time to time. Some of you have sent my videos hype points, and that's a big help to further push the content. So for those of you who have sent my videos hype points, thank you so very much. Okay, the best part of the video. At the bottom of every single video I upload, including shorts, I drop a spotlight for military veteran support groups. I do one every month. March's spotlight is National Montfort Point Marine Association, Incorporated. This is a non-profit veteran service organization established in 1965. There's a brief bio and a direct link, so check them out to see if you're willing to support them, even if it's just a simple link share on your socials. And that's a wrap, folks. Your Friday's video from yours truly. Okay, so now it's time to fire up your game, load in, and fuck shit up. Enjoy your weekend and let me know how your games go. Until the next one, out.